I feel honored and humbled to have been appointed by the President to lead this important Ministry of Finance and Development. I feel energized. I'm rolling up my sleeve and ready to go. My vision, which is really, I support the President's vision of turning Zimbabwe into a middle-income country in the next few years. It is doable. That will require pushing forward with stronger growth that is sustained and that is shared. The pillars for that involve restoring confidence in the economy, working externally on the arrears clearance front, making sure that external investors can be interested in Zimbabwe again. I'll be rolling out a plan on the arrears clearance and the whole debt restructuring process. Coupled with that is building credit lines globally. It's already started. Institutions such as the CDC showing interest with the 100 million facility that we need to conclude. Make sure that we build those reserves and credit lines. Internally, it is about fiscal consolidation and making sure that on the expenditure side, we live within our means or move towards that. That is always a process. You always need a kind of 3-year process for fiscal consolidation and not a big bang approach. On revenue collection, we need to strengthen our tax collection systems so that we close the net there and really restore that fiscal balance that is so required. Now, on the monetary policy front, the idea is to make sure that monetary policy and fiscal policy complement each other. The one is not an albatross or a substitute for the other. So again, those monetary policy reforms, which I've explained before, are being looked into with urgency. Ultimately, we would like to have a Zimbabwe dollar that is stable, that people have confidence in, and we'll start working towards that. And you'll hear in the monetary policy statement the first steps towards that, building reserves. Because to have a domestic currency, you need to build reserves and also support output production in the gold sector, because that's part of the reserves. So that's really the plan. Of course, looking in terms of development, I'm also Minister for Development, or at least make sure that I keep an eye on it. I'm very passionate about the youth, making sure that youthful entrepreneurs are supported. So ideas around financing strategies for the youth, a national venture fund, which I've written about before, those are things that I'll look into, because as you know that with banks, whatever bank you create, people are still borrowing at crazy rates of 5% per month. Who can afford such an interest rate? In the end, we have institutions, but people cannot borrow. What you need is patient capital in the form of equity capital that stays in a business for 3 to 5 years and allows the entrepreneur to come through. Entrepreneurs need mentoring and so forth. They need incubation, they need support, all of the things I'm very passionate about. I'm also passionate about the health sector. Absolutely. Most people don't realize that I'm actually also an expert on the economics of HIV, which I've written about globally, and I've supported international institutions in Geneva on how to allocate resources in the health sector globally. And I'm very passionate about making sure that ministry works well. Agriculture. You know, there's a wonderful, I hope I'm allowed to say this as minister, a very wonderful model in terms of an agricultural exchange in Ethiopia. It would be very good for us to look into that and see whether it's something that we could implement here, where you have farmers who are linked directly to the trading floor in terms of their produce. So they're able to deposit their crops out in the areas where they are, and then it's transported onto the trading floor and it's properly priced, they are paid, and they get paid at source. It's a wonderful way to modernize agriculture. Agro-processing is key. In industry, I talked about the National Venture Fund before. This fund or another mechanism should be financing re-equipment of industry. Companies using old equipment. I myself am involved in the manufacturing sector, in the plastic sector. I control a factory here, and I know the issues. So that also needs support. If you look at infrastructure, you know, when in my previous life, I actually created an infrastructure index for the whole of Africa. I track every country in terms of progress in infrastructure, and again, we want to make sure that our institutions such as the IBDZ is able to do the project preparation for infrastructure, but then we need to strengthen public-private partnerships. So that unit needs to be strong so that it can negotiate with the private sector. Because at the moment, you know, the money really is always with the private sector globally. It's never with government. So how do you bring them in? You need that mechanism, that structure that crowds them in. And when you build infrastructure,
you need what you call an inclusive infrastructure. So when you build a road, a tarred road must have feeder roads. That's how you bring in the community and have facilities along it. If it's a power station, power generation, you must be clear on the transmission and then the final distribution, and naturally the pricing. If you're looking at rural infrastructure for electricity, for example, I believe that the solar systems are key to electrifying the rural sector, because for $500 a year, you can buy a solar unit that can power 4 light bulbs, 2 USBs for charging your phone, and that's it. And to me, the middle class in the urban areas must be part of that process of electrifying the rural sector. I'm going to come up with indicators for development, because if I'm managing money and I'm giving it out, I want to monitor those indicators so that we have the monies that I'm managing, the Ministry of Finance, have a development impact and have a sense that people are feeling the impact of the development agenda.
How best to describe the task ahead of you?
It's enormous, it's Herculean, I'm very energetic, and I'm definitely up to the task. You can be sure. Well, everything is contextual. I'm starting now, but in the process, what I'll do is listen. I have no problems with talking, as you can see, but it's listen. So I'll be consulting, first of all, with the President, Vice President, and then my colleagues. I've already started talking to them in terms of their needs, their priorities, because I'm passionate about having an impact on the ground in terms of development, and make sure the resources that I'm managing there's value for money. Absolutely, but listening is very important. So later in the week, I'm going to listen to industry, meet with the captains of industry, and try to understand their issues, what could work, and just listen to them. It's very important to listen.
Are you going to pursue the Lima plan?
But I prefer to say is the external debt resolution plan. Absolutely, it's not one or the other, whatever, because it involves different players, different actors at different stages. So just call it external debt restructuring and resolution. That's right.
How do you hope to tame the appetite for spending within central government? How do you hope to tame that?
Well, I used to train civil servants. I trained 3,000 municipal managers in the whole of South Africa. Over a 3-year period, you could see the improvement. Accounts were being acquitted at local government level and so forth. So the culture of service delivery, of using money properly, value for money is very, very critical. Just changing the culture without necessarily retrenching people is also a very important issue.
And Minister, the issue of change,
what I want to say is that we are going to have currency reforms, and there will be a process, there will be a roadmap. The first step you will see in the monetary policy statement, and that will come out at the end of the month, and then we progress from there. As I said, there are various options that we're looking at, but the ultimate is to have the Zimbabwe dollar back, and then the issue of change and divisibility will not be issued. So if there's a Zimbabwe dollar, there will be notes and coins.
I see.
And you can be assured you can have your change.